Michael Torres was sleeping when the phone rang at 3:17 a.m. on November 28, 1981. As a former LAPD detective who now provided security services to Hollywood's elite, he was used to late-night emergency calls from panicked celebrities. But the voice on the other end of the line was different. Not hysterical or demanding, but quiet, desperate, and absolutely terrified. "Mr. Torres, this is Natalie Wood," the voice whispered. "I need your help. I think they're going to kill me tonight." Those words, spoken in the final hours before her death, would haunt Torres for the next 40 years. Now 84, and facing his own mortality, he has finally decided to reveal what Natalie told him in that last desperate conversation, testimony that proves beyond doubt that her death was not an accident, but the culmination of a carefully orchestrated murder conspiracy. Torres had never met Natalie Wood personally, but she had contacted him 3 weeks earlier through an intermediary, asking him to investigate what she called unusual activities around her home and personal security. What he discovered would convince him that one of Hollywood's most beloved stars was being systematically stalked by someone with unlimited resources and deadly intentions. She was being hunted, Torres revealed in his first public interview about the case. Not by some random stalker, but by someone with access to professional surveillance equipment, unlimited funding, and connections that went straight to the top of Hollywood's power structure. Whoever was after her had the resources of a small army. The investigation Torres conducted in those final weeks of Natalie's life uncovered a surveillance operation so sophisticated that it could only have been orchestrated by someone with extensive law enforcement or intelligence connections. Her phones were tapped. Her house was being watched 24/7. Her car had tracking devices, and people in her inner circle were reporting her activities to someone else, Torres explained. This wasn't amateur hour. This was professional-grade surveillance conducted by people who knew exactly what they were doing. But what made the surveillance so terrifying wasn't just its scope. It was its obvious preparation for violence. Torres discovered evidence that the people watching Natalie were conducting what he called target assessment, detailed analysis of her habits, routines, and vulnerabilities that would be necessary for planning an assassination. They knew everything about her, he recalled. Her schedule, her fears, her medical conditions, her relationships. They'd been studying her like a military target, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. This wasn't surveillance, it was reconnaissance for murder. The most disturbing discovery was that the surveillance network included people Natalie trusted completely: household staff, business associates, even friends who had been recruited or coerced into providing information about her activities. She was completely surrounded by people who were betraying her, Torres revealed. Some of them probably didn't understand what they were participating in, but others knew exactly what was happening. They were feeding information to someone who was planning to use it to kill her. Torres tried to warn Natalie about the scope of the conspiracy against her, but she already suspected much of what he confirmed. What she didn't know, and what Torres was still trying to understand, was the identity of the person coordinating the surveillance operation. She kept asking me who was behind it, Torres remembered. She suspected her husband, but she couldn't understand how he could have arranged something so sophisticated, so professional. She didn't realize that Robert Wagner had connections that went far beyond Hollywood. Those connections, as Torres discovered through his own investigation, included people with backgrounds in intelligence agencies, organized crime, and corporate security. Individuals who could provide the kind of professional surveillance and assassination services that the operation against Natalie required. Wagner didn't do this alone, Torres explained. He hired professionals, people who specialized in making high-profile targets disappear in ways that wouldn't attract unwanted attention. This was a contract, killing disguised as domestic violence. But the most chilling aspect of Torres's investigation was his discovery that Natalie's murder had been planned for months, with multiple contingency plans depending on circumstances and opportunities. They had several different scenarios worked out. he revealed. Apparent suicide, drug overdose, home invasion, boating accident. They'd war-gamed different approaches depending on what opportunities presented themselves. The drowning was just one option among many. This level of preparation explained why Wagner was so confident about taking Natalie on the yacht trip, despite her obvious reluctance. He knew that the isolated location would provide the perfect opportunity to execute one of his planned scenarios. During their final phone conversation, Natalie revealed to Torres that she had discovered something that convinced her the murder attempt was imminent. Wagner had been making preparations that suggested he expected her to die very soon. She told me he'd been acting strange all week, Torres recalled, making phone calls at odd hours, meeting with people she didn't recognize, handling financial paperwork that he usually left to others. She said it felt like he was preparing for her funeral before she was dead. Natalie had also noticed that Wagner's behavior toward her had shifted from anger and abuse to what she described as cold calculation, as if he had stopped seeing her as a person and started viewing her as a problem to be eliminated. She said the physical abuse had actually decreased in the past week, but that somehow made her more frightened, not less. Torres remembered. She understood that the change meant he was no longer trying to control her. He was preparing to kill her. But what made that final phone call so heartbreaking was Natalie's growing realization that even Torres, with all his professional skills and law enforcement connections, might not be able to save her from what was coming. She'd called me because I was her last hope, Torres admitted. But by the time she reached out, it was already too late. The conspiracy was too advanced, too well connected, too carefully planned. All the pieces were in place, and there was nothing I could do to stop what was about to happen. During the call, Natalie begged Torres to promise her that if something happened to her, he would make sure the truth eventually came out, that her death wouldn't be dismissed as an accident, and that her killer wouldn't escape justice forever. She made me swear that I would remember everything she told me, that I would document everything I had discovered about the surveillance operation, that I would someday find a way to expose what really happened to her, Torres revealed. She knew she was going to die, but she wanted to make sure her death wouldn't be meaningless. The most devastating part of the conversation was when Natalie explained why she couldn't simply disappear or go into hiding to escape the threat against her. Wagner had made it clear that if she tried to run, he would harm her daughters. She told me that Robert had described exactly what he would do to her girls if she tried to leave or if she tried to expose him, Torres recalled. He'd convinced her that cooperating with her own murder was the only way to protect her children. That's the level of psychological control he had achieved. This emotional blackmail explained why Natalie had agreed to go on the yacht trip despite knowing it was dangerous. She believed that compliance might save her daughters' lives, even if it cost her own. But Torres also learned something during that final call that has never been disclosed before. Natalie wasn't the only target of the conspiracy that Wagner had organized. She told me that Robert had talked about cleaning house, about eliminating everyone who might cause problems for him in the future, Torres revealed. I wasn't just investigating a plot against Natalie. I was investigating a systematic plan to eliminate multiple people who knew too much about Wagner's criminal activities. This revelation suggests that Natalie's murder was part of a broader criminal enterprise designed to protect Wagner from exposure for various illegal activities that could have destroyed his career and sent him to prison. Torres immediately understood that his own investigation had put him in danger, that his knowledge of the conspiracy made him a potential target for elimination as well. I started taking precautions, he admitted. Changing my routines, watching for surveillance, making sure other people knew what I was investigating. I realized that if they were willing to kill Natalie Wood, they wouldn't hesitate to kill a retired cop who knew too much. The precautions were justified. Within hours of Natalie's death, Torres began receiving anonymous threats, warning him to abandon his investigation and forget everything he had discovered. They made it clear that my life expectancy would be very short if I tried to go public with what I knew, he revealed. They had already demonstrated their willingness to kill, and they wanted me to understand that I could be next if I became a problem. But Torres had also prepared for this possibility, documenting everything he had discovered and arranging for the information to be released if something happened to him. I wasn't going to let them silence me the way they silenced Natalie, he explained. I made sure that multiple people had copies of my files, that the evidence would survive even if I didn't. They could threaten me, but they couldn't make the truth disappear. The files Torres compiled during his investigation provide some of the most detailed evidence ever assembled about the conspiracy that led to Natalie Wood's murder: surveillance reports, financial records, communication intercepts, and witness statements that paint a picture of systematic planning for assassination. I documented everything, he revealed. The surveillance network, the financial arrangements, the personnel involved in the operation, the timeline of preparation. It's all there, preserved and authenticated, waiting for someone with the authority to act on it. But perhaps the most important evidence in Torres's files is his detailed record of that final phone conversation with Natalie, including direct quotes that provide her own testimony about who was threatening her and why. She told me exactly who was going to kill her and how they were planning to do it, Torres revealed. She identified Robert Wagner as the person coordinating the conspiracy, described the surveillance operation she'd discovered, and predicted that her death would be made to look like an accident. Everything she told me came true within hours. This testimony, recorded by a trained law enforcement professional and preserved for 40 years, represents the closest thing to a deathbed confession that exists in the Natalie Wood case. The victim's own identification of her killer, given to someone she trusted to remember and eventually reveal the truth. Torres's decision to finally speak out has been motivated by his growing understanding that the conspiracy that killed Natalie Wood was part of a broader pattern of violence and corruption that has protected powerful predators for decades. This wasn't just about one murder, he explained. This was about a system that allows wealthy, connected people to eliminate problems through violence, knowing that their money and influence will protect them from consequences. Natalie was just one victim of that system. The evidence Torres preserved provides law enforcement with the most comprehensive documentation ever assembled about the professional assassination of Natalie Wood, proof that her death was not a crime of passion, but a carefully planned execution carried out by professionals hired to eliminate a threat to powerful interests. I've carried this burden for 40 years, Torres concluded, but I made a promise to Natalie Wood in her final hours, and I'm keeping that promise now. She begged me to make sure the truth came out, and that's what I'm doing. She deserves justice, and her killer deserves to face consequences for what he did. The man who received Natalie Wood's final desperate plea has finally broken his silence. The question is whether law enforcement will listen to what she told him in those last terrified moments, and whether they'll finally act on evidence that has been waiting 40 years for someone to understand its significance. Natalie Wood begged for her life, and that desperate plea was preserved by a man who understood that truth has a way of surviving even the most systematic attempts to destroy it. Her voice, calling out across 4 decades of silence, is still waiting for someone to answer with justice,